Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We are live for our second edition of Runtime Live. We're happy to have Simon Lightfoot alongside us here, along with the rest of the team from the ad company. Why don't we get started and do a quick introduction so that you know everyone from the ad company. Chris, you want to go?
Yeah, hi folks. I'm Chris Swan, engineer at the ad company.
Xavier?
Hi, my name's Xavier. I'm a student ambassador at the ad company.
Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a guy named Kevin at the ad company.
And then at Colin.
Hey, I'm Colin. I'm the other guy at the ad company. So Kevin and I are two of the founders. Barbara's our CEO, is the other founder. Super excited to have this discussion today. Thanks, Anthony.
Awesome. And then for those of you who don't know me, I'm Anthony Prakash. I'm part of the ad company, work with this wonderful gang here, and I focus on our dev relations and partnerships. So happy to be with you all today. So just to kick off things here, what we thought we'll do for our second edition today is focus our discussion around an article that Xavier and I put out earlier this week. The article is titled Building Flutter Apps Without a Backend. And so we thought we'll go a little deep on that, hear from our co-founders on why we think that is useful for the Flutter community. How can you take advantage of it? Go under the hood a little bit if you like, and then talk about some of the questions from the community that's come to us over the last few days, and try to address those in this call as well. So keep your questions coming on chat as and when you have them. And I'm going to pass it on to maybe Xavier to talk about, what prompted the article and what's the crux of it. And, we can have an open discussion about it. Xavier.
Thanks. So the core idea behind the article really was what is like the biggest pain when you're starting a new project as a developer? And for me, that's always been infrastructure, and especially when it comes to freelancing. Like when you're working on a small project, it's a lot of work for one person to set up all your backend, your database, everything, right? And so really when we get down to it, I think that's one of the things that makes the app platform great is you can just focus on having full scale architecture without having to set that up yourselves. So you can just immediately start focusing on writing the application. And so if you take a look into the article, you can see the differences between, should I go ahead and share the article here? We can go over it a little bit.
Sure. I mean, the topic itself is quite interesting, right? I mean,
yeah.
The notion that you don't have to write a backend has always been one of those untouchable things, right? That just make my app and it just magically works, right?
Yeah. So this is the article here. And we'll start down here. So if you take a look at your typical architecture, we have this nice little infographic here. You'll see that your data is everywhere. Your data is over here on this server, this server, this server. And how can we sort of reverse it? Here's how. So with the app platform, all of your data sits in one server. So rather than the developers having to set up that infrastructure, each individual user creates an @ sign, and that @ sign will store all of the information. And so I guess we can dig down a bit, and I'll ask Colin and Kevin some questions here because I'm really citing them when I wrote this article. But some of the security benefits. So we'll dig down a bit into the white paper here. I was reading over it, and I saw some of the things that were pretty interesting to me. So let's talk about data availability on the edge, I guess. Everything's peer-to-peer. So what does that mean in terms of like the security?
So is that a question, Xavier?
Yeah, like what are some of the, I guess, what are some of the, when it comes to security, what does peer-to-peer mean versus, centralized architecture?
Sure. So the first thing to think about is if you're going to own your data and it's going to be sort of under your control behind an @sign. So I've got @Colin. I own all that data behind @Colin. I decide who gets to see what, and that sounds all great. But unless you've got the security side of that sort of nailed and make it really, really easy for people to be able to deal with, it's never going to catch on, right? So first of all, let's deal with the security side of things. Security's really done by making sure that the person who owns the @sign owns the keys to the data. And the only way you can really do that is actually have the mobile device that they're using to create their @sign to create the keys, the encryption keys. So that means everything needs to be done on the edge, and that was really actually pretty difficult. When Kevin and I started talking about this 7 years ago, mobile devices simply weren't powerful enough to create a key in a reasonable time frame. They could do it, but not in a reasonable time frame. So when you set up your @sign, you may notice like a 20-second pause. There's two things that are happening there. One, some of Chris's code is getting you a certificate for your @sign, and at the same time, we're actually generating a certificate or a set of keys, cryptographic keys, on your actual mobile device. Some of those are asymmetric. What that means is there's a key pair. There's a public part and a private part. And what's important is only you hold on to the private part. So you've got your own private keys. And the underlying protocol that we developed is advertising the public side of those keys. So people if somebody wants to send you information, they can get hold of your public key and they can encrypt it with your public key, which means that only you can actually decrypt it. And obviously that works and vice versa. If I want to send @CPSwan some information, I'll notify CPSwan, say, here's some information, come pick it up. And when @CPSwan picks that information up, it will be encrypted with CPSwan's public key. And that means that only Chris will be able to actually decrypt it and see it. The really huge advantage about doing everything on the edge is everything in the middle, although they can route information, they actually can't see the information, which is sort of what's fundamentally wrong with internet architectures at the moment. At the moment, you are encrypted most of the time. Let's say you go to Facebook, that's over an SSL connection, which is encrypted, but it's actually in the clear for Facebook. So as they route information around the world, they can actually see who's talking to who, what they're doing, because it's essentially in the clear for Facebook. It's not in the clear for anybody on the internet. So your service provider can't see what you're doing, but it is actually all in the clear for Facebook. And that's the way every single website sort of works at the moment. Not great, right? All the middlemen get to see it, and it's not not just picking on Facebook. It's pick a bank, right? So your banking app works just fine. It's encrypted between you and the bank, but the bank gets to see everything in the clear. Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to do that? Say that again, Simon?
So you have to trust someone at some point.
You have to trust somebody at some point, but I'd rather trust the people that I trust, right? I'd rather know that if I'm talking to the bank, I'm just talking to the bank, and that anybody in the middle literally cannot see it. So,
yeah, definitely.
So when we say that there's no backend to worry about, that's because Chris, myself, Kevin, and Xavier are worrying about all the backend. There is a backend, but it's abstracted in such a way that you don't have to worry about it. We're just routing in the back end. We're just routing through the protocol and infrastructure encrypted data blobs that we can't see because we haven't got your keys. So that's the power of doing anything on the edge. I think the other thing is encryption is actually pretty CPU heavy for all the right reasons. Even if you've got the keys, it's not a non-trivial math task. So actually distributing everything to the edge just makes really good sense. We don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff in the middle to do all that encryption. But Chris, please jump in. I can see you itching to jump in.
I was going to jump in there. Just that really the abstraction piece is the key.
Yep.
So we sometimes talk about what we're doing in terms of giving everybody on the internet their own tiny private server where they can control access to their data. But the important point is we're not asking them to become server administrators or database administrators or cryptography experts. And so what we're building here starts off with a developer experience to make it easy for people to build apps. And then that turns into a user experience to make apps where all of this stuff is seamless. Yep. So, you were just talking, Colin, about public keys, private keys. That's seamless. People just send messages to each other or press buttons to do actions.
Yep.
And all of that stuff's happening behind the scenes because of the layers of abstraction that have been put in place.
It's also critical for having those abstraction layers to make sure that not one developer has the responsibility of making a mistake in the way that encryption is implemented, right? So what you want is just to do things a set way and know that they are being handled correctly, right? As a developer.
Yeah, exactly right. So maybe get Kevin to explain about what that model looks like for a developer. So as you probably can tell, I'm the backend guy doing all the backend stuff. Chris is helping with making sure that I'm doing everything right. But Kevin's really the sort of developer on the front end that said, Colin, not everybody wants to be dealing with all this madness at the protocol layer. We've got to abstract it for developers. So Kevin, over to you.
So I'm still kind of stuck on when you said holding on to the private part. That's kind of...
Oh, okay.
I can't get that meme out of my head somehow.
Moving along.
Meanwhile, back at the wrench. So so the goal from a developer experience standpoint is to say, store some data on my phone, indicate who it should be shared with, and then the SDK will pick it up, encrypt it. And because we have a protocol, then it will figure out how to get that information to the right place. And when it gets to the right place, then only the recipient, and this is actually, we don't talk about this quite so much, but part of the end-to-end encryption means that only the recipient, the intended recipient, is able to decrypt it. So nobody else in the universe can decrypt that information unless there's a quantum encryption planet somewhere that can do things faster. But but that's the goal. The goal is to say, I'm just going to store it on my phone and then let my phone figure out how to pick that up, notify the other person, encrypt it for them, send it over to them, and then they can receive it. So that's the goal, is to make it as absurdly simple as possible. Just store some data, share it with Xavier. That's it.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Kevin, is relating to application hyperconnectivity. So what is it, and how do we use it here?
Yeah, so there's a number of I always like to call them emergent properties, but these are things that we didn't actually honestly think about before we started the protocol. It's just like later on we're like, I guess that means if all my data is in one server, then all my apps can see potentially all my data or reason over all my data is the term I like to use. And sometimes you want that, probably sometimes you don't, but let's just say that, that you could discover. So for example, the contacts is one we use all the time. So what if all your contacts were shared across all your apps? So they just magically have all your contacts. And you could do that with most of the mobile platforms today. If you get permission to connect to your really, really awful contacts app, and look at your really, really awful data in your really, really awful contacts app. But if it's a more natural thing where if you think about a person's data across different domains or different use cases, then you can do some really interesting things. Like say, I notice that you're chatting about this. Should I, schedule a hotel room for you? That kind of thing. So I mean, this could be things that are. So it's kind of like what the big platforms are trying to do to surveil you, collect all this information about you, and then reason over all the data that they can get their hands on about you. it's doing the same thing, but it's on your phone and it's your data used the way that you want, but delivers the same benefits of intelligence and inference and a lot of potential for AI and machine learning to create even new experiences because all your data is right there, in memory on your phone, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. And it's kind of shockingly not as much data as people would imagine. It's certainly not terabytes of data you're talking about, but megabytes.
So I was going to say, just getting back to that sort of that notion of like without a backend, right? I mean, we're talking about that, and I think we're talking about all these features of AppTime, but like, what does, I mean, we're talking about where it's stored. What does that mean for a developer, though, right? Like, from a developer's perspective, like there's that paradigm that every developer has, which is like the client-server relationship, and it's about sort of breaking your sort of perception. Would that be the correct sort of terminology, I guess, about how you approach data storage? Because normally you'd be like log in, right? And then you've got trying to think of a good example. The contacts. Let's explain contacts, right? So if an app wants to use a contact, they can make that request from the this is it. I'm trying. Why don't you take us through sort of maybe a scenario that where you think it might be more applicable to explain this?
So for Xavier, you want to grab that one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so so a couple things. So first is the fundamental notion of a contact would be, in the way that we think the internet should work is that a contact is some information that somebody else is sharing with you and granting you access. You kind of have to have that relationship in order to do a peer-to-peer things. You have to know who each other is. I mean, the protocol insists that both ends of a transaction or a data exchange are known to each other and are therefore approved. And you can block that so that if somebody tries to share, I don't know, some malicious code or some ridiculous thing, wouldn't it be nice to be able to just shut those things down at the root and not allow them ever to come into your space again? So that's one aspect of it is it's actually information shared by somebody else. And then once you have that, then you can start to say, okay, I have a connection with Xavier and I can share with him, I don't know, a task list or a document or a picture or whatever. So it becomes, the instance of a contact, which is really the proper term actually is probably a connection. So if I have a connection with Xavier, then I can do lots of interesting things because I have a connection with Xavier, and I know who Xavier is, and I trust Xavier, so I can feel comfortable sharing information with him. So that's kind of where it kind of goes with both. So the information architecture is interesting. So it starts with Xavier sharing his information with me, and then I can share information back with Xavier. And then that's wrapped with an application context so that I'm doing tasks or I don't know things with my Xavier family, so the context actually occurs with the application, but the fundamental premise is individual connections of people connecting to people, and that's where the information flow happens. And we try to make that performant and easy to implement.
So if you imagine, Simon, like if you're starting up a contacts app for the five of us to be sharing contacts with each other, you set up Firebase, right? First, rule number one is always start up Firebase. The problem with that is you could probably get it working. I'm sure you get it working in no time at all. And we'd all be able to share everybody's contacts. Everybody would be able to see everybody's contacts. But also the developer would be able to see, or the owner of the database would be able to see all the contacts. That sort of sucks, right? I mean, that brings evil things into the world where you can see where all the contacts are and all the rest of it. So, and that's sort of classic client-server architecture, right? So the server gets to know everything. What we have on our platform is peer-to-peer. So everybody has their own database, right? So @Colin has a database, Chris has a database, and everything's referenced by contacts @Colin or contacts @CP Swan. And the coolness about what Kevin just said is when you're transferring information, both ends know who you're talking to. So you know that there's CP Swan is trying to get information from @Colin, and Colin and CP Swan knows that he's actually speaking to @Colin. That the protocol makes sure that that is true, cryptographically true, before data gets exchanged. What that gives rise to is I can give different information for the same location, which hurts your head a little bit. So just imagine this: contacts @Colin, when Simon looks it up, could include X information. But contacts @Colin, when Chris looks it up, may actually include the same information and additional information. So that's very difficult to do if you're not doing peer-to-peer. And actually putting that in the hands of me, Chris, or any of us in a peer-to-peer contacts app gives rise to people doing some cool things. Being able to share in your contacts. I know my garage door opener. I wouldn't do that in a shared database. That would be crazy. But I could do that now with a peer-to-peer thing, because Simon never gets to see my garage door opener, but Kevin does. And yet it's the same location you're looking up, right? It's contacts @Colin. You can give away contacts @Colin, but you get to decide who gets to see what. And that we call that polymorphic because we like saying polymorphic, but that's what it is.
There's actually a piece of that in the article about polymorphic data.
Yeah, it gives again. It's a very small thing, but it gives rise to really interesting use cases.
Yeah, I'm pedantic, so I call it a kind of polymorphism.
Yeah, exactly right.
We've gone down into the weeds a little bit in terms of thinking about the developer experience here, because actually, when you say, oh, you're going to start off with Firebase, that's kind of a choice. And of course, yes, other people might use DynamoDB, other people might use a relational database, And so there's all of these data management services out there. But when you're then building an app to use that data management service, you've got to construct a data model. You've got to think about your local caching, how it's going to take care of updating the remote, when it's going to do that. And that's another aspect of what we've been working on, is having a seamless and consistent data model across what's on the device and what's being stored in the platform, such that the developer doesn't have to concern themselves with that. They're just putting key values into a store, and it's magically taking care of synchronizing that store across the invisible back end and the multiple devices that might be accessing that.
You got to use it to see it. I guess to model it in your head. So, Xavier, is that the next step? Do you actually want to show us how this works?
I don't have a demo for today, but you can definitely go ahead and get started here at @sign.dev. And so it'll take you through the getting started steps there. And we have a number of packages as well as on our GitHub, as well as a few demos that you can go ahead and take a look at.
Yes. What was the package that was made with the command line interface for starting up?
That's @app.
@app. This is @_app.
Yep.
Yep. So do global activate, and then that allows you to sort of create a sort of a starting project to work with when dealing with Flutter. Cool.
Yep. So it's essentially the equivalent of Flutter Create, but on the app platform. So that'll be in our Getting Started guide under how to get started with create your own app platform project. So that takes you how to use app and create a starting app platform project.
Definitely sort of a nice way to get started. I was going to say, I it's been a while. I want to have another swing at building something. I've got some ideas. I won't jinx it right now, but I can't remember. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So there was previously the at lookup libraries and a few other libraries that were being used, which were highly technical, and then you've revamped those a little bit. Is that right? Like you had like a new, easier SDK.
Yep, exactly right. So the at lookup library is still out there. Actually, it's still out there, and it's actually doing all the heavy lifting. And the at lookup library essentially is the network level protocol stuff. And you can still use it, but it's actually wrapped now in an SDK, and the SDK makes it crazy easy. But recently we published what we're calling the R SDK, so the Resilient SDK, which makes the abstractions much easier for developers to use. I mean, it's very, very easy. As Kevin said, you just save a key pair and then say who you want to share that key pair with. And then the SDK will make sure it gets that information, it's routed to the right person at the right time. And so you don't really need to know anything beyond how to save stuff locally on your phone and tag it with the right @ that you want to share information with, which means that there's a bunch of services that are picking up and routing all that information the developer can get to see, but there's probably not much need to go see anymore. So that's what we've learned actually working with Xavier and a bunch of interns over the summer, that we really need to abstract stuff so it's crazy easy. But if somebody wants to dig in, then all that detail's still there. I mean, it's sort of built on top of the. Kevin mentioned we got a protocol. That's where we started. We actually started with writing a brand new internet protocol to allow all this stuff to happen, and then most of the work though has actually been abstracting that protocol so that developers can have an easy onboarding experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The at lookup library is really the protocol verbs, literally.
Yeah. And
then on top of that, we have there's client SDKs and server SDKs, and they always want to put them together and make one thing because it's kind of a master thing. But anyway, so you have a client SDK and then a mobile version of that. So the client SDK would work on, doesn't include any platform specific code, like how do I get to the keychain and
right,
that kind of stuff. So so that's where the mobile SDK or the Flutter versions are including the functionality for everything you would need to be able to write and store data, to the keychain, to the local persistence. So it just kind of goes up. It's a full stack, so network up to persistence, up to syncing data and storing and syncing data at different levels of abstraction.
And that's the @client mobile package.
@client mobile, yeah. Which we should probably rename as @client Flutter, actually, because it's no longer just mobile. It now works on multiple architectures and desktops and.
And actually, I just noticed that you've got a nice little page which describes each of the libraries as well. So there's @complex Flutter, @chat Flutter, @demo data. You've got the works in there.
And yeah, Xavier's @app, which is literally an extension of Flutter Create, which is well done and properly done.
Built on top of Flutter Create, sort of just takes the bare bones of what you need to get started on the app platform, and it does it for you.
Right. So, is that going to be something that you work through next month, and like taking someone through sort of setting up?
So next month, or possibly the month after, we're not 100% on that yet. I'll be going through and starting from from scratch with that project, and we'll just sort of build a very basic app that just shows the in and outs of creating an app platform project.
So I do love. I have to say, I love the idea when you do an ad app create. You actually get something that works. It actually does something. It's not just a skeleton app. It's actually a skeleton app that actually does at least the first thing that needs to be done.
So one thing I had come up around the whole topic of the article was this question was posted to it. So my phone is my mini server storing all my data now. What happens if I lose my phone? Then all my data's gone. That's the advantage of cloud storage. It doesn't matter.
So who wants to answer that one?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you lose your phone, that's a bad day. You don't want to lose your phone, but yeah, it does happen. Drop your phone down that elevator shaft. Yes, I've done that. There's a gap between the elevator shaft and the elevator. Your phone can actually go down there. I learned the hard way.
This is why you need big fat phones. Okay.
Exactly.
You mean that phone size gap in the?
Yeah, that phone size gap. Exactly.
Whenever I get on an elevator.
So what happens then if your phone gets smashed and dies? Like,
So I mean, the good news here is all the data is actually cached in the cloud in the app platform. So there's a cache, we lovingly call it a secondary server because it's secondary to your phone. So your phone is like the primary place all the data is, and it's obviously you've got the keys on your phone, so you can decrypt all that data. But there is a cache.
but that's encrypted, right? So
It's completely encrypted. We can't see it, but the data's still there. It just happens to be encrypted.
so as long as you back up your key, you're good.
So as long as you've got a backup of your key, you get your new phone, and your new phone says, what's your ad sign? You type in your ad sign, and it'll say, where's your key? And as long as you can provide the key, then you're in good shape. And obviously the next question is, well, where do I put my keys? So you can put your keys wherever you like, but a copy other than your one phone is probably a good way of doing it. Now, we naturally do that if
Hang
you've
on,
got...
hang on. There you go, keys, and then you got a USB thumb drive. There you go.
Exactly, you can put it on your thumb drive.
Make sure your thumb drive's encrypted with another key.
Yeah, you can put your thumb drive encrypted. But the way I do it is actually have two devices with my ad sign activated on. And if you've activated, and if you use the Wavy app, then there's a little icon that says retrieve your keys. So the keys are actually stored on the mobile device in the sort of hardware encrypted area, which means they're super safe. So I just have my ad sign activated on two devices, and then I can always retrieve all of my keys and then fire it out to the other device, and we're up and running again. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can keep your keys on the thumb drive, wherever. I mean, they're your keys. You look after.
The same as like if you've got like a password manager, you've got like a master password. You use your master password. Give
Exactly the same.
Yeah, they're just access to everything, right? But but you only have to worry about that one piece of information. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the point. What you just said though, I just realized. So if the key is stored, so this is going to be technical, but I want to ask this. So if the key is stored in the hardware keychain, then you're storing a key encrypted in another key.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Basically,
there's actually three keys. There's another key that it's all encrypted as well, but we won't go into that. But,
So because each device has its own cryptographic storage, it's going to activate a different key for. But then the key itself is encrypted inside that, which you're unlocking when you activate your device or login or whatever.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah. Chris, you want to add anything there?
I think you've carpet bombed that one.
I do like keys. The magic of keys in the cryptography is very cool. The other thing I will mention, Simon, as well, is obviously there's encrypted data, but there's also public data as well. And the public data obviously is not encrypted because it's public. You don't want to encrypt public data because it's not very public then. But what it would be really nice is if you could cryptographically sign it. So that's exactly what you can do on the platform as well. It actually sort of comes naturally, but if so the Wavy app that we pumped up earlier on, that actually is allowing you to create a little website with your data on, but all that data is actually cryptographically signed with your set of keys. So if somebody wanted to check that it really was you that publish that, there's easy way to do that, because every bit of that content is actually cryptographically signed as well. So it's public, but it's actually signed properly, which is probably the way everything should work, but tends to not work that way. So that's the other side of cryptography, I guess, that we tend not to think about, because it's all about encrypting everything, but it's also proving that it's provably true that you actually published that piece of information.
Well, I mean, signed emails have been around for a long time. I'm trying to think of GPG and all this. So
Exactly.
that notion of it's not encrypted, but it's signed, so you know that it's coming from your verified source.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's some use cases where that's incredibly important, obviously, right? So.
This is where we get Wavy from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that's a particularly convenient way of keeping your key safe as well. So.
Well, Simon mentioned password managers, and you could put your key into a file in a password manager as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really is not. It's just a file at the end of the day.
So so you get started with your app, right? And that you create your template that gets you set up with the app client mobile client package. And I was just looking at the SDK, right? Do you mind if I share a screen?
Go for it.
Just kind of curious, just to get some first-hand. If I can get this to work, that is. Come on. Bear with me.
You can do it, Simon. We know you can do it.
What's it? You can do it, water boy. Right.
There you go.
Hey, look at that. It's magic. So, I was just glad to have a look at the SDK here. So, I think one of the actually, do you know what I'm going to do? Sorry, I'm sharing a tab. If I share a window, then I can switch tabs. That makes more sense. Siri. There we go. This one. I think that's coming through, is it?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, so I was just looking through, and he says I've lost it already. No, I've completely lost where I was. So fun times. So anyway, with app client stuff, we can do sort of CRUD, right? So
yep.
From a perspective of an app developer, you delete key, download file, get key, so on and so forth. And then these sort of shared by, shared with are all like the people's @ signs.
Yep, exactly right.
Sounds nice and simple.
It really is simple. Xavier, do you want to explain how easy it is?
So in terms of actually putting data onto your store, it's as simple as calling @client.put, and then you provide it with your @key, which is essentially the key, and then you provide a string for the value.
Key is in key value, right? It's like just essentially a string essentially.
Yeah, and so that key there has the actual key, which is the name of the value you're storing.
Right.
The namespace down below is attached as a part of the full key, and that's sort of just used to represent or differentiate your data across apps. So it allows you to sort of filter the data on your storage.
So you're basically siloing the data, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
basically, if I'm building an app and my app is called Hello, right? Then I might put Hello as my namespace. So all my data that I put is with the Hello namespace. But it doesn't stop another app from you accessing that data if it needs to. So if I wanted to, so that's kind of how the Wavy app and contacts work. In that you can access that data that someone else has if they're sharing it with you, right? So
that's exactly right. The namespace, we don't actually police it, but what we encourage people to do is to actually use their namespace as an @ that they own, so it prevents clashing. Just like you have like reverse DNS in other languages.
Well, you have like bundle. I guess as an app developer, you can also use a bundle ID or a package name for an app or something that's unique to your app.
Exactly, and obviously, most apps have their own @ so we tend to use the @ so that the best practice is to use your an @ you own as your namespace. And
okay,
if that sounds expensive, it isn't. You can get a free @ at @sign.com, and away you go.
I have a question. Something just clicked in my head.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm building an app. I can register an @ for my app, right?
Yep.
And that allows users to share data with the app developer.
Yep.
Because they're the owner of that @, right?
Yep.
So there is data. So you still share data essentially with the app owner in a certain fashion. You get to choose that and still revoke that information.
Exactly right.
But then you've also can share directly with other.
The app can be a peer. There's no rules about an app not being a peer, and there's no rules about an app having to have a UI. You can have a headless app if you like. That's perfectly reasonable. That can provide application logic.
So, okay, so it's got some examples here. That's quite nice and handy.
Yep.
Sorry, I cut in, Zavis. So you're saying like, so we put in a key, and then a dynamic value. So would it automatically convert arrays for me and I don't know objects, or is this only strings, or does it serialize it for me? Does anyone know? Kind of curious.
I usually serialize them for myself, so I haven't actually. Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure on that one.
You can also share binary data. So that's why it's dynamic.
Okay. So would that be like I'm guessing this is one for kind of. I guess that would be a UN8 list, like a type data.
You got it. Yeah, and obviously. We could do some pre-processing or processing on that, but of course we encrypt it. So
it doesn't make
people
much difference.
like compress stuff and then we encrypt it. I mean that works, but essentially it always gets turned back into a string, so it can be sent across the protocol. So the protocol actually on the wire is just using strings.
So that kind of takes me to this bit here about you got download list of files for a given transfer ID. That download file, I'm guessing, is a file. If you wanted to share an image or some data,
yep.
What would be the most appropriate way to do that?
There's actually. I mean, it depends. Is obviously the real answer.
Scenario, right? Yeah, of course.
It depends on the scenario.
You can put with a UN8 list, and then
you can share a key can contain some binary data, and we'll deal with that for you. That's not a problem. But say if you wanted to share a stream of information, a camera feed. So the use case might be, if anybody wants to write this app, it's a cool app. I want to share a video from my phone to Simon's phone, right? So real-time video, end-to-end encrypted, would be pretty cool, right? But you're not going to be able to save an object and ship it. That's sort of store and forward. So normally the protocol works in a store an object forward, give access to that object. But if it's a data stream, then that's clearly not going to work. So we actually have another verb in the protocol, which does streams. And it would be a fully encrypted stream. Exactly right. So essentially you say, this is a stream endpoint and this is a stream endpoint. Join those two streams together. So if you've got a large file you want to share or a video stream, then the stream is the way to do that. And it's obviously encrypted in the same way end to end. But it uses a rendezvous point on the cloud secondary server, so that you can share that data.
I was just wondering where this at stream response is.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it looks just like a stream method. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm just wondering where it's defined.
Oh, okay.
And do you know what package that's in?
I think it's in at lookup, if I remember right.
Oh, okay.
It's further down in the protocol stack.
No, I was just looking. I couldn't see.
Yeah, so look at lookup class, and you'll probably find it.
Oh no, but this is a class in itself, isn't it? Actually,
Yes, it's a whole another. Yeah, that's
right, well,
it's another whole loop down.
that's something for another time. I'm just kind of curious. So
yeah,
so
if you want to see how that works, there's actually an open source project that we're working called Atmosphere, and Atmosphere is basically peer-to-peer file sharing between any endpoint, and you don't have to be on the same network. You can be anywhere in the world because the protocol does the routing for you.
So all of these functions in here, basically, you can just use, and magically it's all encrypted and it's all secured between people, and the world is a better place.
That's the plan.
I mean, there's quite a few. Like I can see, like just with this simple set of functions, there's quite a few things you can achieve, and I think, yeah, the key is to understand like anything can be. I mean, from days of old, right? Like we know that we can store any data with key value pairs, right? Like that's a known problem. I think it's. I wonder about how people might decide to use that. So like you could obviously from my perspective as a developer, it's like, well, we could take some sort of blob of data that we have in the app, like some models, serialize that into JSON, and then put that up on a key and say, this is my whatever it is. And then the other side you're sharing it with someone, and the other side retrieves that data and displays it. So I guess you would have to have one. I mean, you're talking about like reading, writing, and deleting, the standard CRUD operations, right? Create, read, update, delete. I guess there's notify I saw in there. I've stopped screen sharing now, but yeah, there's notify. So that allows someone to monitor and be told about something. Is that
exactly right?
So now
think of it as a data event model. So if I create something that's on my phone that I'm sharing it with you, how does your phone know?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So notify says, "Hey Simon, I got data for you."
And you're saying it's over here. Come get it.
Over here, come get it. And then the other. I mean, there's a life cycle of the data that you're sharing. So there's a number of parameters you can set, timers. When does it appear? When does it disappear? When does it, if I delete it on mine, does it get deleted on yours? So a cascade delete, we call that. So there's a number of parameters there that are also supported. But the notify says there's new information. It's updated. It's been deleted. It's been created. Whatever. And that's kind of considered like a data event trigger between my phone and your phone.
I might have to dash in a minute, but I have another live stream to do. I was going to say it's really interesting. I mean, from a developer's perspective, right? If they get started that sign, you've given them the tooling to get started. They can get app up and running immediately. They can get the @ signs for free. The free @ sign up, the randomly generated @ signs are free, so they can already start getting with the protocol. They've got their secondary set up. They can start playing around with the protocol. There's guides and documentation online. So I suppose from a developer perspective, the next thing they could try then is taking whatever they have right now and saying, how do I do this product I already have, but with @ sign, right? With this principle. And then I think if they can then go, oh, my app would work well in this different way of thinking about data and storage, then what that means to migrate potentially to being just on the app platform, what that means. I do wonder, sorry, just some things that come up in my mind as I'm talking about this. I do wonder, if there's room for @. This is not this. I'm just throwing this out there now. This is terrible. No, I'm just thinking about the fact that, if I need to migrate, like I've got 100 users or 500 users, 1,000 users on this other platform, and I need to migrate them, I can't really ask them to go, please set up an @, right? Like it's not going to happen, right? So if you want to move, you want your app to be secure and you want your users to have secure data, then the question is, what is that migration path? I think there's some sort of opening for future sort of discussion around what that means, right? Because maybe you could generate like an @ automatically and then just get a random @ under the hood, right?
Yep.
So
Everything
then
we
they still
can
use their username, but under the hood it's some @ or something. Or maybe there's some sort of
absolutely.
migration.
You could generate it and not even tell them what their sign is. It's just an app that seems to work somehow.
Right. I mean, I suppose the key there is that they haven't backed up their key. They need to think about that.
Right.
So it's a slightly different perspective. But
Yeah,
maybe it's
that's exactly right.
So I did this. So I did this with one of my daughter's friends the other day. So set her up with an @ sign. I did it on my @sign.com account, and she logged into the Wavy app, and it just said, what's your @ sign? So I told her the @ sign, and the onboarding widget just says, look in your email to get your PIN number. We'll send you a PIN number. So that confirms she's got the email, and at that point, her app generates the keys, and she's got her keys, and so we're just bootstrapping with the email address. So the email address is sort of throwaway, but it's a way of getting the initial. Is this really the @ sign? Is this really bonded with an email address? And sure enough, as soon as she gets the PIN number, then away you go. So happy to work with developers to get that sort of mechanism working. It's pretty trivial. And then the user experience is pretty easy. You give the user whatever their @ sign is. If you got the @ sign for them, that's fine. And away they go. They get an email address to confirm it really is them. But importantly, we don't keep the keys are still generated on their phone. Nobody else gets get the keys. All that stuff is fine. It works fine. So the user experience is pretty easy. I think most people are used to getting an email with some PIN numbers in. That's not a big deal.
okay.
So we actually had somebody on the Discord channel was asking exactly that question actually yesterday with 50,000 users. How do I get them on board? And I think it's a pretty reasonable experience.
I'm also really interested in kind of call it centralized per user encrypted database. It's something I really wanted to see happen for a long time, which it doesn't really matter where the data is stored as long as it's encrypted with keys from your phone. So if you wanted to store in a centralized Mongo database or Firebase or whatever, you could, but I mean, that's the issue is always that currently at least the mental model would be that the admin has access to absolutely everything. And that is a risk. I mean, that sounds kind of interesting and kind of fun, but it's really interesting when you actually, I mean, we had this experience with some of our interns where they're like, great, right? I can do all this with Firebase. I was like, great. And then they open up the Firebase, look at all this data. I'm like, yeah, you can see everybody's everything. Are you cool with that? And they're like, holy shit, excuse me. But no, I'm not okay with that. And so is there a way of doing that, with a per user encrypted data set? That's an interesting one to play around with.
So, Simon, I hear you have to be somewhere.
Yeah, I've got another stream to get onto. So over on the Flutter community YouTube channel, we're running Flutter Apprentice, where everyone is welcome to come learn how to build Flutter apps. So
yay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to head off, but it was great to join you, and I'd love to join again and discuss further.
Thank you, Simon. And this looks like a good wrapping point. So thanks for everybody for watching.